This is Life Transformation Radio. Prepare to engage. Seatbelt activated. Download initiated. Your quantum journey of transformation begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. Hi, I'm Rob Actis, best-selling author of The Law of Action, voice actor, business mindset coach, the podcast whisperer, and Mr. Action himself. Life Transformation Radio is heard in over 90 countries. Thank you for joining us from all around the world. Whether it's your first time joining us or you've been listening to Life Transformation Radio for some time, I want to personally thank you. Here at Life Transformation Radio, we are committed to share more about real life, love, the power of positivity, romance, and of course, laughter. We care about how others find their internal drive and purpose. We celebrate life's challenges and overcoming them. Please rate and review Life Transformation on your favorite podcast platform. Listen to us live on Mondays and Wednesdays with a special bonus episode on Thursdays recorded live on Clubhouse. Also, a personal invitation from me to you. Please join us on Facebook in the Life Transformation Radio community. On the show, my guests are amazing people who are forces for good in the world around them and live a life of transformation. My guest today does just that. Today, Sean, Dustin, and I discuss how you can navigate through life's struggles into a position where you feel confident. So if you want to learn to share your struggles and successes in the hopes of helping others, this is the show for you. Sean Dustin is a fellow podcaster who's also a single dad. A union blue-collar guy, former drug addict, spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud, was released in 2006 with nothing but the clothes on his back and a bag of mail and a lot of legal paperwork. In 2010, he finally kicked a long-term meth habit and started a long climb back up the ladder of life. I'm happy to say that he has managed to navigate himself into a position where he feels confident in sharing his struggles and successes. And today, we are doing just that. Sean, welcome to Life Transformation Radio.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we want to talk about your transformation. I mean, that's a lot. I looked at your bio and that's a lot. Federal and state prison, drug trafficking, fraud. Let's go in the Wayback Machine and let's just give an overview of where you were, and then let's go and where you are today.
Awesome. Absolutely. And, I grew up in a abusive home. My father was an alcoholic and a police officer. And, my parents basically were divorced when I was 7. They used me to get back at each other, which caused a lot of anger in me and, feelings of not being able to control the situations that I was in. I got in a lot of trouble from the time I was 7 until pretty much all the way through school. Was kicked out of 5 different schools, expelled a couple of times. I discovered methamphetamine, which was crank, when I got to it. It hadn't become crystal meth yet. And, that was 16, ended up in my first, rehab at close to 17, didn't get out of that for 16 months. Just one after another. I mean, it seemed like every time I turned around, I was getting in trouble for something else. I'd have a couple of periods of stints of good behavior, and then I'd fall right back into a situation or find drugs again, or whatever it managed to be. I started selling drugs probably in mid 90s, and that lasted probably till 2000 when I went to Vegas with my girlfriend. I got her pregnant, and so we decided to move on to Vegas. And basically from there, that's where things really started going downhill. Had my daughter, screwed things up again, was petitioned by the courts to terminate my rights as her father. And I chose to not show up when I was served those papers while I got a DUI and was sitting in jail. When I got out, I knew the court date was coming, and I chose to not show up because I felt like she'd be better off without me. And I also, looked at it as, well, at least I don't have to pay child support now.
Wow.
And that's just the kind of guy I was, man. I was very manipulative. I used women. I used them. I used everybody, basically. If you weren't somebody that I could get something from, then you weren't of any use to me. And once I got you as a mark and you were in my targets, I used that resource until I bled it dry and then threw you away as if you were nothing more than trash. And, I did that for a long time. I learned how to do it at a very young age, but that's just how I rolled, man. And, it wasn't until after that, that I went to prison. I got involved again, had some period of clean time after that, made a move to Phoenix, Arizona, came back, realized that I was, pretty much almost down and out. I had enough money to get a place to stay, like a weekly, but money was running out. So I went and did the thing that I knew how to do was I went and back to the strip clubs and the strippers, got a job as a bouncer, got involved with a stripper and moved in with her and started the process all over again.
Now, was all this time, were you on meth all this time?
No, there was periods like this period when I met her. I wasn't doing it and I didn't know that she did it. And when she invited me over, I knocked on the door. She said, come in. I can open the door and she's on the couch smoking a bowl of meth. And it had been like maybe a year and a half since I'd done any. And I knew I should have walked right out that door. But instead, as my mind is telling me, walk away, I'm walking right to her. And wow. I pick it up and bam, there we go again. And that started I ended up getting fired from that job and I started selling. And I was moving, probably quarter pounds of meth. And
that's a lot. That's a lot, isn't it? Sounds like
it is in a way, but you got to think I'm supporting her habit, my habit. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was making more in the criminal enterprise that I had started by doing this. I started hanging out with drug slammers, the guys that are shooting it. And I was employing them to take one of my vehicles, truck that I had, and to go and do smash and grabs in businesses and in burglaries in homes. And so they would go use the truck to do all of that, come back, and then I would pay them for the stuff that they brought me, from guns
So in essence, it was just to fuel your drug habit. So the smash and grab. So it's not like I want stuff. It's just like, how fast can I turn it to get to where I can get my fix?
Yep. So I can pay the dope man to keep getting money. Not really making a whole lot of money. I'm just spinning circles, just doing enough to get by to pay the bills and to continue bringing in those to supply our habits, basically.
Man, what is that like? Like to just have that just constant motion of like survival, but in a survival in a different way, like survival, like I need to get my next fix, like, and just doing whatever it took to get to there. What is that like when you look back on that?
It's tiring. It's, when I look back on it, it's like, all of the effort that I put into doing what I was doing, I probably would have been able to have a regular job and made more money and gotten further in life had I just did it the right way. But instead, I for whatever reason, from a really young age, I was a latchkey kid and I didn't have a whole lot of supervision and a whole lot of discipline growing up. So I just kind of carried that out once I became an adult. And so authority, I always, didn't like authority. I didn't like people telling me what to do. I didn't like I didn't want to go to work, basically. And I wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do. And everything I did was always geared as to get around having to do what I was supposed to do. I put a lot of effort and energy into doing the wrong things.
Right.
and instead of just doing the right things.
So fast forward. So you're addicted to meth. You're doing the smash and grabs. You're selling. And then is that when, everything came crashing down and you were locked up?
Yeah. So I ended up, the guy that I was getting my stuff from, he got busted, and I didn't realize he put a confidential informant on me. I had 5 controlled buys. They were watching me the whole time, for about a month and a half. And, they literally, they had pictures of me coming in and out of my car, taking the gun out of my back, putting it under the seat. And so I knew something was going on. I had this feeling like my time was up, and I had like 6 firearms, 6 pistols from various robberies that, breaking into houses and them selling them to me.
Right.
All of them had the serial numbers filed off, and I ended up getting rid of 4 of those. I kept the smallest one, which is a small little Derringer, but it had the serial numbers filed off as well. And probably 3 days after I did that, about 3:00 in the morning, I was also counterfeiting hundreds at this time because, I didn't have anything better to do and I could never sleep. So, I mean, what else am I going to do but try to figure out how to do more crime, right? And so I had $100 bill on the screen. The stereo in my living room was on really loud. I had like 35 speakers in there because of all the stuff that I would get from people, right? And so it was loud. My girlfriend's asleep with her friend in the next room with the door shut. It's pretty loud out there. And all of a sudden I hear boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, the door is shut. So I don't know what's going on out there, but I'm like, oh my God, we're drive by. And, I probably hadn't slept for 3 days. I told my friend, I get on the ground, and I grabbed that little small gun and I opened the door, and it's kind of smoky. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Like, somebody was shooting. Why would there be smoke? So I start going down the hallway, and at the end of this hallway and to the right is the front door. Well, in front of the front door is one of these tall 6-foot, remember the old big screen projection TVs that were huge and heavy? And it's about so that's in front of this door. And so the door doesn't open up all the way. And when I look around the corner, the gun is literally like at my knee, and I'm crouching around the corner. And I'm looking, and I see the SWAT shields, and I'm like, oh shit. And I ditch the gun behind the TV, and I dive onto the ground and put my hands on my head.
That was probably a really smart thing for you to do.
Oh, well, if they would have seen that gun, that was it. Lights
that's
out.
what I mean. That's right. So I'm glad you had the wherewithal to do that, because it would have turned even worse than it was. Can you imagine?
Oh, yeah. Well, they were already pissed because I lived near Nellis Air Force Base. And so they had double pane glass windows, and I tinted the inside window from the inside. So one of the flashbangs that they shot into the window, it didn't make it through the second pane, and it bounced back on them, and it blew up on them. And if their police dog that they had with them scared him, and it bit one of the officers. And so like they were mad when they came in, and they thought that since they couldn't see inside, but they heard where all of that, because I told you the stereo was on pretty loud. So they thought that's where I was. Right. So they concentrated all their firepower, the flashbangs and the concussion grenade that they threw in. They concentrated it right in that living room area. So yeah, they hogtied me, and I didn't get in trouble for that gun because I was being a smart ass, and they picked me up and they rammed my head into the TV, which pushed it over the gun. And so they never found it. That saved me 5 years.
But you were in for how long? How long were you in for?
I did a total of, they were trying to get me for a 2 to 15 on a first felony. And I ended up pleading out to 1 count of trafficking a controlled substance for 6, what was it? I think it was 15 to 60 months. And I paroled out of the state in 18 months. But when they let me out 3 days later on my own recognizance, and I went on the run for another 3 months, did some more crime, did a crime spree through a few states, and came back. And, long story short, ended up getting in trouble. Again, got caught with a gun that I was going to use to kill somebody with, because something happened when I came back from that crime spree and got. Okay,
so wait a minute. So hold on a second. But you just glanced over that, like, yeah, I was going to use that gun to kill somebody with. I mean, that's a pretty strong statement. Like, wow.
So what happened was I I was on the run. I moved my whole operation. They never found the drugs or the money that they found a little bit of drugs on the raid, but the majority of it, the bulk of it, they didn't find because I had it hidden in a TV VCR combo that was up in a corner hanging from the ceiling. So when the drug sniffing dog came through, he missed it. And so nobody else knew where any of that was either. And so when I came back, I went to there and all my stuff was there. So I moved my whole operation, went on the run, and then found some new criminal activity that I was doing, which had to do with credit card fraud and doing wire transfers. And, I figured something out, went down from Vegas to Amarillo, Texas, and then hit a bunch of spots on the way and got like $1,000 a pop, cash, and ran out of meth in Amarillo and had to go to sleep for 3 or 4 days, and kind of level out. Couldn't find any, went to strip clubs, went everywhere. Nobody would sell us any meth because I look like a cop. And,
that's funny.
Yeah. And so we were forced to go to sleep, and I did the same thing coming all the way back up to Vegas. And when we got there, so my girl, a roommate at the time, she never, ever calls us or cares about what we're doing. And all of a sudden she's calling every 3 hours going, hey, when are you guys going to be back? When are you coming back? When are you going to be here? And I'm like, dude, there's something weird going on. And I stopped at my friend's house. I went and hid all the cash except for, maybe $1,000, and showed up. And sure enough, there was a dude there, her friend Steve, and this other guy that I'd never met before. And we start smoking some drugs, and the guy pulls out a gun that I don't recognize and has us get on the ground. Well, Steve was a hang around for the Hells Angels and was trying to earn his stripes by letting this other guy know, hey, there's a big, he's coming back with a bunch of drugs or something, they're doing something big. And, so that's what happened there. I am a manipulative person, right? And so I knew how to do this. And so I just basically told the dude, I'm like, hey man, you're pretty stupid if you're going to do this, because you're not going to get anything right now. I have nothing for you except maybe a Cannondale bike, a little bit of cash, and maybe some other item. Oh, some fireworks that I got from New Mexico. And right. I'm like, let me show you what I can really do for you. And so I started showing him a little bit on what I was working on, as if I hadn't completed it yet and was doing what I was doing. His eyes got big and he's like, yeah, I want in on that. And so my whole goal is just get him out of the house, right? At this point. And so I got him out of the house, and then I went, and 2 days later, or the next day, whatever it was, I went to Big Five and purchased a shotgun in the assumed identity that I was using and stealing to currently. And so I ended up, I was cheating on my girlfriend at the time, and I was at a weekly, and I made a couple of mistakes, and the ID that I was using and the identity I was stealing was a black dude, and I'm not black. And so when I tried to use that ID, I didn't realize that in Vegas, they send all that information to Metro to make sure you're not a fugitive when they rent you a room. And so obviously when it came back, it was like a black guy, and then here's my picture, right? And so I went to go pick up the shotgun. I didn't pay any attention to the fact that it was 12, 1 o'clock, and there should have been plenty of rooms available. And they said, hey, well, your room won't be available for 3 hours. Can you please come back then? And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Didn't even think about it. I'm more concerned with this gun that I'm going to pick up and this guy that I'm going to kill now because he just did this to me, right?
Wow.
And when I got back, they were there waiting for me, and that was pretty much it. Went to prison. I didn't realize. So another part of the story is that the same guy that was the fraud and forgery guy that came to the first raid showed up there too. And he's like, I remember everything that you had and what you were doing at your last residence. So I know you've had 3 months and you're doing something completely different than you were doing before. So I know you got a lot of stuff at your house. He's like, I won't charge you with any of this. And there was at least 15 to 20 charges there for me from what I was doing and all the IDs and credit card information and stuff. And I was like, all right, well, that's a good deal. So let's go. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep. I haven't slept in 4 days. I was literally falling asleep in the back of the cop car at 120 degrees, right? They didn't have the air conditioner on or the car going. And I'm literally sweats just pouring off of me. And I'm like snoring and sleeping in the back. This guy shows up. We make the deal. And I take him to the house, give him everything I got. He didn't care about any of the drugs that were sitting there, even though I told my girlfriend ahead of time, hey, I'm coming. This is the last time you're going to see me for a while. And, the gig's up. And what I didn't realize is the guy that he had with him was a Secret Service agent that was doing a ride along. So the shotgun and the credit card numbers he charged me for later on down the road. So as I'm fighting my case in the state, right, I get indicted for the feds, on 2 counts of whatever it is. So I end up getting transferred and to fight my case in the federal court. And, I settle for 2 18-month sentences running concurrent. And then I had the 18 or the 15 to 60 there. So I go to state prison and I parole out after 18 months. And then I go to federal prison, which I'm in transit for 3 months. And I hit like 3 different, whatchamacallits. I ended up paroling out on supervised release in 2006.
Okay. So now where are you now? Because you said for 2 years now, you've been dedicated to changing your behavior. You're a good boy now, Sean, and it's to interact and be positive. So where are we now? So let's go back to 2 years. That's only, 2019. What was the transformation? This is Life Transformation Radio.
So
it's been a hell of a ride. It's been a hell of a ride since you've been there. Let's fast forward. I want to hear the transformation. I want to hear the moment where 2 years ago, you said, you know what? I'm changing my behavior. What was that?
Well,
moment?
that all started in 2010. In 2006, I got out. The financial crisis hit. I was an apprentice for my union that I'm still a part of. I wasn't done. I learned how to do credit card fraud, like the real credit card fraud, like encoding and embossing and printing out credit cards and using them. I did that from, I believe, probably 2008 to 2010. Got caught a couple got in trouble, did a couple of violations, went to a 90-day treatment center for men, did something else, went and did 30 days, in county jail. So before I did this 30 days in county jail, the turning point for me here was I'd gone AWOL from my marriage because I'd married somebody, and I took off while I'm doing this credit card stuff. I just left. I just disappeared out of this marriage and didn't turn my phone off and was committing crimes, and living this lifestyle. When all of that stopped, I ran back to where the only place that I had was, my wife. And I'm like, hey, things are going to be different. I promise. I'm so sorry. And, I've been doing this for so long and it was working. And this time it didn't work. She wasn't buying it. And I remember chasing her down the highway, at a high rate of speed, trying to, because I needed her to believe me that this was going to be, you need to believe me, damn it. You know what I mean? Because you're the only thing I have at this point, and I need you to do what I need you to do and stop being difficult and just do what I say. And it wasn't working. And so I'm chasing her down the highway. We hit some traffic. She pulls over. I pull over, and we're on the side of the highway, busy highway. People are going by, and I'm screaming at her. And all of a sudden I just overcome with emotion and just start bawling uncontrollably. At that moment, I realized that all of my BS wasn't working.
Wow.
And I had literally nowhere to go but up, right? I'm like, it was almost like my whole life flashed in front of my face, and what a disappointment I'd been up to this point. Nobody can be proud of me. I have no job. I got no career. I got no retirement. I'm in my 30s. And it's like all of these, and just at that moment, it's like all this just came flooding to me. I literally was like floating outside of myself. And mind you, there's people going by. I'm bawling on my knees on the ground, like, please, please take me back. I was going to be different. Right. And I didn't even believe myself. Right. And people are honking, get off the ground. And, this whole scene, right? And I'm like literally floating above myself, looking at how pathetic I must look on my knees, just crying like a little girl. And not that, I'm not to mean anything bad by that, but that's just what it was going through my head. And from that point on, I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop doing drugs. I have to turn myself in to go do 90 days in 6 weeks. I don't want to be kicking while I'm in a place that I don't have no idea anything about, and I don't want to be vulnerable. So I stopped smoking, stopped doing meth, went and did that, did my 90 days, got out, switched everything around, stopped hanging out with the people, stopped. I started playing slow pitch softball to get away from, to do something different, was going to AA, a 12-step program, all that stuff. I was still in my union. I started on the rowing team. And then I was, I got involved with my union on the business side of it. So I was a sergeant at arms for 2 years. I was a trustee for 2 years. I was a executive board member for 2 years. And ultimately in 2019, I ran for a business agent position and I lost. But what ended up happening through playing softball, I was making goals for myself and I was achieving them. And I was realizing that, wait a minute, there's something to this. Like if I say I'm going to do something and then I do it and it's like not illegal, I can be proud of it. And then I can like tell people about it. And like my mom's proud of me. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Is this like what it's supposed to be like? And then so I just started leveling up. All right, well, if I can do this, then let me do this. And if I can do this, let me do this. And I ended up getting an injury and I got hooked on opiates for another 7 years. And I was able to function on painkillers, but I mean, it consumed my life. It literally everything revolved around these damn pills and running out, getting sick.
They're pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, getting sick, taking too many, like looking for more and like trying to navigate this whole thing while I'm still trying to level up. I started listening to podcasts like 3 years prior to when I started my own. And I was listening to Joe Rogan. I listened to him religiously, like for 14 hours a day. Followed the people that he had on his show, like Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, Lex Friedman, all of these intellects, people that, like they were in my head, man. And they were just like, I loved everything that they said. That's and before I knew it, like my mindset was changing without me even realizing it. And so, yeah, I wanted to start a podcast. I listened to Joe Rogan, like I said, and he's always saying, well, you should start a podcast. And I really thought he was talking to me. And so I'm like, yeah, you know what, Joe, you're right. Because when you listen to podcasts and you listen to them a lot, you become friends with the host. But it's a one-sided relationship, but you literally feel like you're friends with them.
Right.
And I thought he was talking to me. And so I'm like, yeah, you know what? I probably should. And I figured it out. And, there's some other stuff that got skipped in there. But the bottom line is that through podcasting, I was able to change my behaviors. And mind you, up to this point, I'm still an abusive person. I'm still like, I've got anger issues. I, still treat my ex. Well, we're not ex yet, but I started the podcast when I left her. So up to that point, I was still an abusive, toxic person. And, I would bully her. And I did this throughout most of my relationships. And it wasn't till I realized, and this is where the turning point is my daughter. So I had a daughter with her, right?
Right.
And remember the other daughter I just abandoned, right?
Correct.
And so I remember this very vividly. I'm yelling in a rage at my ex. My daughter's probably about 1.5, and she's behind me. I glance and I see her, and I glance back again, and she's gone. And I start yelling, and then I look back again, and she's gone. It snapped me out of my rage, and I'm like, oh, where'd she go? I need to go find her. And she's in the furthest part of the house, hiding, shaking and crying.
Wow.
Because she's scared of me.
Absolutely.
And what went through my head at that point was, I wonder if that was me when my parents were fighting.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I'm continuing the cycle. And she's the next generation that's going to be affected by me and how I'm being. And like, this is the example that I'm giving her. And the whole thing was, I like, damn, I don't want her growing up thinking that this is what a relationship looks like. And when she gets into the situation herself, maybe 20 years down the road, that she doesn't have the fortitude to be able to say, you know what? No. Because she's going to think, well, my parents used to do this. This is normal.
Right. So you broke the cycle.
Absolutely. And what helped me through that was through the podcast, I started leveraging guests that would help me through whatever I was struggling with, whether it was imposter syndrome, whether it was anger issues, whether it was anything that I was struggling with. I brought somebody on, whether it's a life coach, a mental health counselor, somebody that I could talk to. And then I was bringing my listeners on this journey of my own transformation. And what literally happened is, as I started talking to people or other women that experienced domestic abuse, I started coming out about my own involvement in being a domestic abuser. And, you know, I was never a physically violent person. And it wasn't because I didn't want to, it was because I didn't want to go to jail. Trust me, if I could do it and get away with it, I probably would have. But being honest and open about that and telling people my truth and standing in my purpose and not allowing my pain, my shame, and my guilt no longer have power over me, I realized that the more I talked about this, that the less and less and less it had effect on me. Like it didn't have any power over me anymore because I wasn't hiding from it.
Right.
And so within all of that, you know, I started a nonprofit organization to help guys that are 18 to 24-year-old males coming out of incarceration and reentering the community. That's in the process of being built right now. I'm an advocate for, against domestic abuse. And I talk about my own issues in the hopes that other men out there will hear me and I can be an example to them to realize that, hey, look, man, it doesn't have to be this way. Right?
I love it. Yeah.
You know, you can
Sean,
change.
Man, you are the epitome of transformation. Like, I just really want to acknowledge you. I'm glad that you have broken the cycle for your daughter. I think that's a beautiful thing. And that's what it took. That's what it took. And, you know, I know you still have a long road to go ahead of you. Your podcast is called Nowhere to Go But Up. Incredible podcast. And I just want to say thank you for sharing a bit of your story here today on Life Transformation Radio.
One more gem, and it's the end and the up to this story is that my daughter that I had abandoned reached out to me a couple of months ago and wants to start a relationship and begin that process.
I'm very happy for you. It warms my heart. I love to hear that. Thank you, Sean, for being here today on Life Transformation Radio.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for your support and taking the time out of your busy and precious day to listen. We so appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me, along with my very special guest, Sean Dustin, to touch your heart, move your soul, and inspire you to live a life of transformation. I'm Rob Actis. Until next time.
This is Life Transformation Radio. Download complete.